All right, something that we're going to visit with today. I enjoyed talking about before we went on the air. We almost had a program out there.
Right.
We should have had our tape recorder going.
Right.
The Breckenridge Springs area,
Right.
to the across the river to the east of Carthage.
Right.
And you were telling me that there's quite a history about this
Oh,
place that I didn't
yes.
realize.
A few years ago, actually in 1979, we had a special ceremony out there as a result of the interest of the Midyett family to update that area. And so we had a lot of talk about it then, but of course that's been a few years ago, and people that heard about it then probably do not remember. And yesterday, the day before yesterday, in the library, I was running through some microfilm of the newspaper, and I ran into an article that reminded me of all this information that I had formerly had on Breckenridge Springs. This article in the newspaper was dated 1896, and they had had an organizational meeting out there, and this was a write-up reporting that meeting, and that meeting was to organize enough to establish a fine school system. And they talked about what kind of school they'd like to have, and the top kind that they could put in would be an institute. Well, that was at the very time that Carthage established, within a few months of the time, that Carthage established the Male and Female Institute.
I see.
So this was the equivalent in that day of a high school or a junior college, so to speak. And so they decided to have the peak. And as I read that, I got especially interested in reviewing what went on out there.
Mm-hmm.
And this Breckenridge Springs is out in the Midyett community, which is still a well-known community in this county. And it has a history that dates back, legendarily, at least 300 years. These springs are mineral springs, and they're supposed to have great mineral values for health. And Indians were using them, according to legend, long before Anglos came to this country. And for that reason, it has, of course, one of the richest histories. And I was interested to learn that all of the land out there, the land measurements and everything, begin at that spring.
Is that right?
Yes, that spring is in all the deeds, beginning at Breckenridge Springs, and in one instance it was called Boston Springs. And beginning there, so-and-so's land grant or land deeds would begin there and go east or west or whatever. And the spring itself was never in anybody's deeds. It was community property from the beginning. So when we had a dedication ceremony out there in 1979, in July 1979, it was to dedicate the 2-acre park to the county. And this was the first thing of that sort that we did historically in the county, to set aside a place as a county park area because of its history. We are indebted, of course, to the Midyett family for getting the interest stirred up, and they had sort of a family reunion. And Marge and Rod Nugent got into the interest of it. In fact, I think they sort of stirred up the interest, and Rod supervised the rebuilding of the shelter over the spring, and this is the way it looks now.
Hold that up to the camera and hope that they can see that. Move it in a little closer.
It is there now, a shelter over the spring. The spring is under that. And this spring has furnished water for a school there. And the boys, who are men now, middle-aged and beyond, that remembered going to school there, told the stories of how they went with buckets to get water out of the spring for the school. the church has used the water there also. So I thought we ought to talk about this because this is truly a historical spot. Now, it was developed in about 1850 by Anglo planters who came in and began to claim the land or began to buy the land. And from then on, it developed into a very busy country community. And this is when families whose names we know now, Midyett for one, and Trospers, and we'll name some other families as we go along, but they developed it so that in the just after the Civil War, in the 1870s and 80s, it was a little village. Supposedly it had a Trosper Hotel and 5 general stores, a school, a Methodist church, and campground. They held camp meetings there, and some great revivals were held there in those days. They had a livery stable, a saloon, a barber shop, a dance hall, a sawmill, a boarding house where people boarded and drank the water for health. They'd come and stay for days or weeks to improve their health because they thought that the mineral waters were helpful. They had a blacksmith shop, a cotton gin because it was cotton farming area, and a large settlement of people began to build up there. Now, this little article that I found in 1896 in the paper was during the time they still had this community pretty busy there. And it was in the heart of the cotton growing area. And so they wanted more interest in the medical powers of the spring. Now, they had a doctor. I ran into that in this, Dr. Shannon. And they said he was moving away from Midyett, from Breckenridge Springs, is what they called it at that time. He was moving away because they didn't need a doctor. A doctor didn't have any business because the springs healed everybody, and he couldn't make a living.
All right.
So he pulled up and moved out to Buncombe out here toward Merval, where people were sick a little more.
Okay.
This man that wrote this must have had some land to sell because what he boosted that community, such as you wouldn't have a Chamber of Commerce do today. And I followed this through then into the modern schools into the 1900s. And as far as I know, this institute didn't develop. They might have called it an institute, but it was just a country school. They had a 3-teacher school there at one time, but it never really grew to the point of of a big school institute. But they had that dream, and the people that were on a financial committee that were elected to develop that institute, I think are interesting because they are the old families that were there at that time. F.L. Hickey was the chairman of a financial committee to raise money to build that school. And on his committee were Tom Adams, Payla Catonhead, Lum Bagley, C.C. Carter, Wash Jeter, these are still families that are in the area, Dick Davidson, K.W. Holt, Henry Thompson, Thomas LeGrone. Now, Thomas LeGrone was down in the Deadwood area, so they expected to pull people from all that area, too. Henry Wilson, A. McJempsey, J.M. Trosper, who had the hotel, and Mrs. Spence Midyett, Mrs. E.M. Midyett, Mrs. Muska Hickey, Miss Alice Tiller, and Miss Nellie Holland. And then E.M. Midyett was elected their treasurer. Now, this article went on to say several $100s were subscribed at that first organizational meeting to build this institute. And Payla Catonhead pledged 4 acres of land. And he also gave $100 in cash. He had large land holdings there. And this article went on to tell, and this was a pretty good article in an early Panola Watchman, back in 1896. And he says, you ask where Midyett is? So he goes on to tell. Midyett is Breckenridge Springs, and it's east of the Sabine River, 15 miles northeast of Carthage. And these mineral springs, for years, have provided a campground for Methodist camp meetings. Now, the church that's there now is a Baptist church, but the original church there was
Methodist.
Yes. And the Baptist church operates in what was the school building. They've redone the building and made a church out of it. And the article went on to say that the waters have curative powers. They have stood the test of years and generations. And he says the land now is available. See, they had big landholdings. It's been divided into whatever size lots you'd like to buy.
Okay.
And this is the ideal place for you to come and establish yourself. That's the reason I said he must have had some of that land.
I believe he did.
And the price in 1896 for the land was from $2 an acre to $10 an acre, depending on the improvements on the land. Now, this was in 1896, but the town itself had been operating all those years before. And I'm trying to watch the time because there's so much I might tell you about it. As I said, we got interested in establishing this as a county park. The only trouble is when you set up a park out like that, we don't have any facilities to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't been out there in a while, so I don't know what condition it's in now. But it is dedicated to the county itself as public property. And Tommy George Davis was in one of the families that, his mother's family, grandmother's family, was part of the old Midyett or Breckenridge community.
Mm-hmm.
And they had him dedicate it and turn it over to the county court. And Danny Buck Davidson was the judge at that time, mm-hmm. and he accepted it for the county, and so it was an official ceremony. And people out there, we had a crowd around, and they began to tell stories of what they remembered about this place. It was a gathering place. The springs still flow water. And it's today. And it's curbed, and as I said, covered. And originally, this cover was there, and it was a lattice wall around it to keep the stock. See, we didn't have any limit on stock wandering around. Mm-hmm. And to keep stock from going in and damaging the spring, they had this closed up with a gate. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it was a gathering place for the people. That's a pretty good-sized community. And Miss Pearl Midyett, Mrs. Pearl, was originally a Midyett, and she was a Will at the time. She was the oldest member of the family that was there. And she told things that she remembered. She said they had dances at the dance hall. And down from this spring, it has a little stream, from it. And they dug this out and made a swimming pool and built a wall around it so they could go skinny dipping in the pool. And she said her mother said that she used to walk to the dances barefooted with her shoes in her hand till she got there. So her shoes would look shiny and pretty, because if she walked in the shoes, she'd be dusty and dirty. So then she'd wash her feet and put on her shoes when she got there. And they had great dances. Then another thing they did, you see, this sheltered place around the spring was a community center, and the young people played guitars and things and had evening music concerts. The people would come and sit around and listen to them play. And old men sat during the day and whittled and chewed tobacco and all that sort of thing. So it was a gathering place for all those, before 1900 and into the early 1900s. So this really is a historical place. And when I ran into this wanting to build an institute, this reminded me of all that had happened there before. Now this thing now is moved over the shelters moved over from the original bubble of the spring, and it runs into it. The bubble is under the concrete or under the dirt now because the road has spread out. Originally, the road divided. This was interesting to me, that the spring was in the middle of a divided road, that the road went around to the left and to the right, and the spring was sheltered in it. So the road went around this little sheltered area. But now the road is on one side of it, and it has gone so close to it that they moved the shelter over and channeled the spring water into it. And it is, as I said, curved, and the water stands about 5 feet deep. And it now is not up to the ground level. It was in the beginning up to the ground level, but through the passing of the years, the ground has raised. They said as much as 12 inches, and so the water level is down below that. And the boys that were there, the men, said they used to go there and just lie down and drink right out of the spring because it was water level, level with the ground, and they could do that. And the women that were the girls in the school said they were always afraid one of the boys was going to fall in it because they were daredevils, and they'd stick their heads down in the spring and drink the water. Miss Pearl, that, as I said, was the oldest one there at that time to tell things, and she told a number of things that she remembered that had happened there. And then Eva Osborne grew up out there too. The Furs were some of the ones. See, they had a store. And Eva told that they had, by the way, I don't think we've explained why it was called Midyett after it had been called Breckenridge.
No, we haven't.
All right. When they established a post office there, and that was in the 1880s, they had to choose a name that was not already a post office in Texas, and Breckenridge was. There is a Breckenridge, Texas, out close to Fort Worth. And so they had to have another name. The post office was established in Spencer Midyett's store. And so they named it Midyett for that. Okay, this is the background to a story that Eva Osborne told. And you know who Eva Osborne, Sly Osborne, Miss Sly Osborne.
Okay.
She was a Fur and grew up out there. And she heard her father tell that there was a drummer, an agent, coming in to sell supplies to the stores. And they were at the Fur store. And Mr. Midyett was there. And he stuck out his hand to the drummer to be friendly and says, I'm Spence Midyett. And the man thought he was fooling because that's the name of the village, And he said, well, how do you do? I'm Dallas. And she said that was an insult, because he's making fun of Mr. Midyett. So Mr. Midyett was mad about it because the man didn't take him seriously. He thought he was just calling his name that because that's the name of the community. So they told a lot of interesting stories, and I have just preserved all of this because it needs to go into the archives.
Yes, it does.
This kind of a community is a ghost town now. There's nothing there now but the spring, which they were thoughtful enough to reestablish. And they had Jack Midyett was in his 60s at the time. He's a Methodist minister that came right out of that community, and they got him back, and he spoke that day of his memories of the place and compared it to Jacob's Well in Israel as being, restorative waters that people would come to drink. And then they told about the houses that were around. So-and-so's house was here. The hotel was over there, and all of this. So all of these things are of special interest. I thought I would come to some of the families, and I have them listed here someplace, the families that established that village. The Midyetts, the Gulleys, the Hagans, Furs, Wills, Mays, there was a Mays boarding house, Hickeys, Cadenheads, Hollands, and Adamses. Well, now those are names that are still out there, but not just there, but all over
All
the
over
county.
the county, correct.
Yes. And so many people have, Dixie Gully told a lot of interesting stories about it, his remembrance of it. And so this is just one of the historical spots in this county that I'm trying to remind people of, and we're trying to file stories of. And when you get a historical marker from the state of Texas, that means that this history is also in the archives in Austin.
And true and accurate.
And true and accurate. It has to be verified. You have to have your sources, and it is a bit. Now, after we dedicated the park to the community in 1979, this gave us the kickoff and the beginning of the information to apply for the historical marker. And the next year, in September of 80, we went out again to establish the historical marker, and it stands there now as one of the markers of the county.
Outstanding. Very good. Thank you for sharing
Many
this
families have wonderful memories of that
Yeah.
area. And so, because it is a hallowed spot, we ought to know where it is.
You betcha. And I thank you for reminding me.
Yes, sir. Go on that road sometime.
In fact, we might need to, we'll do a on-the-spot interview out there with a video camera for one of our programs.
That would be good. It is on a road between Farm Market 21 and 123.
Okay.
It's a road between the two. And it goes by Midyett School and on to the other road. It's a cut through there.
Well, thank you. And let me remind everyone about the genealogical library hours. Tuesday and Wednesday from 10 until 3, and Sunday they're open from 1 till 5. And we thank you for being with us, Mrs. LeGrone. Each Thursday we just learn more and more about our county.
Well,
and you'd think it, as long as I've been here, I ought to know it.
We never will learn it all. Somebody said to me, I guess you'll soon run out of information. I said, you don't live that long. It's here, if we can just get it.
Very good.